Caro, and welcome to episode 222 of Caropop. If you'd like to throw us some support and help keep this thing going, please go to caropop.com. Our guest this week is Brendan Hunt, best known as Coach Beard on the TV series Ted Lasso, which he also co-created and co-writes. Now he's back in his hometown of Chicago to open a one-man show at Steppenwolf Theater with a title taken from a Beatles lyric, The Movement You Need. The song is Hey Jude, and the line, The Movement You Need is on your shoulder, is one that songwriter Paul McCartney said he planned to replace, but partner John Lennon insisted he leave it in. Hunt has a theory as to why. The show, The Movement You Need, is about how Hunt and his mother were able to bond over the Beatles despite other troublesome aspects of their relationship. What is it about this music that connects generations? Is Hunt establishing this kind of Beatles bond with his own kids? Why, if the Beatles' appeal is so universal, is there so little music like it being made and embraced today? The Movement You Need is a dramatic change of pace for Hunt. Coach Beard of Ted Lasso is a man of few words, a laconic counterpoint to Jason Sudeikis' loquacious title character. A one-man show requires talking non-stop for about 80 minutes, and in this case revisiting heavy emotional material for each of 8 performances a week. Hunt has performed earlier versions of The Movement You Need in Hollywood and New York, but the Steppenwolf venture is a step up in ambition and intensity, with Broadway in Hunt's sights. How have the show's preparation and presentation changed up to this point? Does Hunt have everything scripted, or is he riffing off talking points? What drove him to write and perform one-man shows in the first place? Hunt tells how his encounter with Paul McCartney spurred this particular adventure. He also revisits his life and work in Chicago, and how he was inspired by a Second City show with an apt title. Then there's the Amsterdam-based improv troupe Boom Chicago, where Hunt worked with Sudeikis, Jordan Peele, Seth Meyers, and others. And given that he and longtime friend and collaborator Sudeikis initially characterized Ted Lasso as a 3-part journey, how are they recalibrating for the upcoming season 4? So let it out and let it in, and please enjoy this Caropop conversation with Brendan Hunt. So first of all, I'm just going to start with some Beatles geekery before we get into, career,
sure,
one-man show and everything else. But it all ties together because this is who you are. You were talking with my wife Mary on BEZ about the Beatles song that most represents Chicago, and I thought you had a really excellent nominee, which was Here Comes the Sun, and you explained it really nicely, and I should let you do that instead of me talking. But I had one that nobody called in and said, and so I'd have to bounce it off of you,
sure,
which is Fixing a Hole. Because if you're driving around Chicago right now, there are lots of holes to fill in because we're just like pothole central. I also feel like it sort of captures the spirit of Chicago. See the people standing there who disagree and never win, wonder why they don't get in my door. Taking the time for a number of things that weren't important yesterday. It feels like grounded Chicago attitude. Plus, it's like a sleeper on like their most famous record in Chicago.
I think at face value of what the lyrics are, I think that's a great call. I must acknowledge I'm slightly haunted by the specter of the wide speculation that that song is about heroin. So, that's kind of a cloud that hangs over that notion. There's not that much heroin in Chicago, I don't think. But I don't know. I haven't been here a while.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not going to come back.
Paul really was writing about heroin, though? I never.
That is. I think the speculation has not really been denied by him, as far as I know, and the timeline for what the Beatles were getting into, I think, doesn't not line up. I don't think Paul stayed on it, but not the way John did. But it's not crazy that at that period that could be what that song is about.
I mean, people downstate would say,
or maybe it's about Chicago. I don't know. It could be the other way.
People downstate would say the song should be "Happiness is a Warm Gun," but I'm not going with that. So, how much of a Beatles nerd are you? Like, are you someone who, when you were growing up, were you looking for like the Paul is Dead clues and turning Revolution number 9 backward to hear it say "Turn Me On, Dead Man," that sort of thing?
I never figured out how to play a record backwards. But I mean, I got pretty steeped in trivia and stuff. Where I try to draw the line is on like collectibles and stuff. I think when I I once went to someone's house who I didn't know was a huge Beatle fan, and went to his house, and he had like it was his entire decoration of his entire house was Beatle stuff, and it was all individually cool stuff. But that I don't know. I just intuited that, like, okay, this is too far. This is replacing yourself with the thing you like, and so I try to like be wary of that. And now, though, like now that there's a few more pieces of Beatle art in the house than there used to be, and I gotta be careful. Gotta draw the line somewhere. But so I have little, not as much visual representation of my Beatle nerddom as you might think. For someone who, I think I will make the claim, yeah, I can get pretty geeked out. I don't know everyone's solo stuff as well as a lot of like Beatle nerds do, and I'll listen to the Beatles Sirius XM station a lot, and I'm almost always learning something when they get into solo stuff, because I know the heavy hitters. I don't know Here Comes the Moon and some other more deeper cuts.
The Here Comes the Sun is the most streamed Beatles song by far of any Beatles song. Here Comes the Sun, more than any Lennon-McCartney song.
That's wild. All right, well done, George.
It's interesting. It's interesting how that's part of what's fascinating about the Beatles is that it has this sort of timeless effect, and that it just sort of lasts in people. So your show, The Movement You Need, is about how you connected with your mother about the Beatles while there was otherwise a difficult, sometimes relationship. What is it about the Beatles that has that sort of cross-generational appeal that almost nothing else does?
I mean, it's so hard to like put a finger on it. I think there might be a bunch of things, but in the end, it just comes down to legitimate, unimpeachable greatness. I mean, the crazy formula of what they were of being discovered at a time when like there were not a new band, a lot of new bands, but they were only new to people discovering them. Then like they'd gotten their 10,000 hours in Hamburg. Like they had become an excellent band, but also they had this working class British discipline that meant that even once they were famous and they got worked to the bone, they were perfectly fine working to the bone because it just made them better. And then they happened to get exposed to, Dylan early enough that it got them out of being too much of just like pop idol, out of a pop idol lane, and like just their desire to keep getting better paid off in them actually getting better, like, yeah. So, but in terms of like discovering them now, if you're young, like you don't know about any of that, you don't have to care about any of that. And the fact that people keep turning to them, I think, can just only mean like they are still great. And like, sure, they get promoted well still, but like, kids see through promotion. That can only get you so far if there's not something material there to actually find and discover and wait around in. And people keep doing it. So they just must be great.
Right. Well, part of what's fascinating looking back on the Beatles, and I'm a little older than you, but not old enough to have experienced the Beatles as they were being the Beatles. It was all in hindsight for me as well. But you look back on, and I totally would geek out on those years of music that I was not cognizant of, like, wow, 1965, 66, they're amazing records. But it was like every year you could sort of pinpoint how music was changing. Like the music of 67 sounds distinctly different from 65 or 69. And I wrote a piece for the Tribune years ago where I was talking about how long it took people to make albums. And one of my examples was that the distance between Adele's first and third album was the same as the distance between the Beatles arriving in Hamburg and releasing their last album. Like their entire career happened between, two albums that Adele put out. And so you don't get that kind of evolution with these other bands that you did when in the 60s, Dylan's putting out 2 records a year, and the Stones and everyone there's just this hothouse.
Yeah, that's a wild thing. I mean, it'll never, that just never happen again. The fact that they were able to put out so many albums in that short amount of time, and each album to be a motherfucking banger.
Yes.
Is just incredible, and and I'm sure it bummed them out to a degree sometimes. It burned them out a little bit, but it just accelerated their development in a way that will never happen again, because no one wants to risk putting out an album that isn't an event, by putting it out too soon. Right. So, yeah, it'll never be done.
Yeah, you have the technology to sort of release stuff faster than ever before, and yet you have to have this whole, at least these mega bands, mega acts, I should say. Taylor Swift turns them around. I mean, it's not my thing particularly, but
true.
She turns them out more than others. But yeah, what was like the first Beatles song that kind of hit you in the heart?
Gosh, there's a few. In terms of hitting me in the heart in like a semi-conscious way, I think I should have known better. Because I remember I talk about in the show, there was I woke up late one night and my mom is still awake and she's watching Yellow Submarine, and I get to sit on the couch with her and watch Yellow Submarine with her. And talk about like, I really latched on. I was very, very young at that time, but I really latched on to When I'm 64, but not like it hit me in the heart kind of way, just like, okay, I get this song. Will you still need me? Will you still feel me when I'm 64? I can latch onto that. But I tried to stay a little bit longer in the Hard Day's Night, and I ended up falling asleep eventually. But something about, I got as far at least as I should have known better when he's singing it on the, they're singing it on the train to the bunch of schoolgirls, one of whom, George marries.
Right. Grandpa's locked up in the cave.
And yeah, and that and that was like immediately became my favorite Beatles song, and for a while, and I don't exactly know why, but I think something about the way John holds the note on I is really plaintive, in of itself. It's like the power of a syllable. And like, I don't think I was old enough to understand regret. And again, maybe I was just attaching it to a sentimental memory of Mom, but I have some other ones with her and the Beatles, so it can't just be that. But yeah, I Should Have Known Better was the first one to like evoke a consistent emotional response that I couldn't quite explain.
And I don't want to preamp stuff from your show, but were there songs that you specifically related to, connecting with your mom over?
Well, the big one was "Hey Jude," but for silly reasons. When I was a kid, I couldn't say the word Brendan. I could only say Nana, so Nana became my nickname. And then anytime I heard a Nana song, I just thought it was about me. And this particularly came into play the first time my dad took me to a Sox game. And when they sang Nana, Hey, Hey, Goodbye, I was like, oh my God, what a welcome. I can't believe they went on their way to do this for me. And
although,
when Mom
you could have taken it as they were asking you to leave, though.
Yeah, but I decided they were funning. They were just funning on me. Okay, and then, but yeah, then Mom, I would catch Mom singing "Hey Jude" in the car, and I'm like, this is incredible. I mean, this song is my name over and over and over again. I cannot believe it. Luckily, it turns out I didn't get attached to, Red Rubber Ball or anything, less significant. Hey Jude turns out to be a recognized masterpiece and
the greatest
well worth
song ever
taking over.
Recorded.
I dare say, yeah. So yeah, Hey Jude was a big one too for that reason. And again, Hey Jude turns out to also be, advice to a child of divorce at its heart, which is something that I definitely was as well. So there was more to it there for me than I realized for a long time.
And you worked into season 3 of Ted Lasso.
Yeah. And
the title of your show comes from it, The Movement You Need, which is from one of the great accidental lyrics of all time. The movement you need is on your shoulder, which, as you've explained, Paul said, oh, that's just sort of a placeholder. And John was like, no, you need to leave it in. What's the lesson there just in terms of art? Like that sometimes it's the accidental stuff that sort of resonates, right?
Yeah. This is a newer chunk in the show that I haven't done before, but, so who knows if it'll make the cut by the time we open, but it is something I've come around to believing. Like, I think it's almost as though John instinctively knew that this song was going to be too perfect. And to have the opportunity to have a mistake in it is what would make it even greater. Like not a bug, a feature, not a mole, a beauty mark.
Right.
I mean, the song is structurally perfect in every other way, and this incredible build that's happening before you even realize it's happening, that finally culminates in the nanas. And I think John was like, nope, no, the bit you didn't mean to do, yeah, keep that one in there. That's what makes it proper.
Do you think it's because he recognized it was an actual mistake, or do you think it was that he just really liked the line because he thought it was evocative in a way that poetry can be in a sort of inexplicable way?
Yeah, I don't think these things are mutually exclusive.
Right.
I think the fact that it was a mistake, that his increasingly perfectionist friend had made a mistake, I think that was part of the appeal to it. Yeah, no, yes, I think he also, of course, liked the line. I mean, if it was he wouldn't have let him have a shitty line in there. But to have something mysterious in there that even Paul didn't know what it meant, I think, it just immediately had an unspoken appeal to John. I just like to think.
Yeah. Well, I think part of the whole Beatles greatness too is that sort of that sense of partnership, working with someone who you bounce stuff off of. I mean, people are like, well, John was the tough one and Paul was the smoothie or whatever. And I think that's way too easy, but just having someone you trust who can tell you, leave in the movement you need is on your shoulder, is better than like not having that. You and Jason Sudeikis have done a lot of work together. I imagine that between the two of you, you've propelled each other's work in a positive way as well.
Oh gosh. I mean, I don't think we've ever had the opportunity to improve either one's Hey Jude or anything, but yeah, I mean, one thing we've talked about with the Beatles just separately before before Ted Lasso was even a thing was he brought this up once. He was responding to, I think it was a Quincy Jones quote, Quincy Jones saying something offhanded that was given too much weight, about like the Beatles, aren't great musicians or aren't even good musicians or something to that effect. And Quincy Jones has worked with some incredible musicians. He's got every right to have a very high bar for what is deemed a great musician. But it's just, individual virtuosity is not what the Beatles are about. And what, they're about, harmony, not just vocal harmony, but being together. But they're also about something that we have been learning in improv classes in Chicago forever, which is, serve the piece, ask what it needs. Right. And all the Beatles ever cared about, no matter whose song was brought into the studio, was to try to make that song the best they could be, even if it wasn't their favorite. Like John and George famously hate Maxwell's Silver Hammer, but if you listen to it, they're harmonizing the hell out of it. Right. They're giving it their all. And if everyone's dug in, just trying to make everything the best it can, without ego, even having to bite down on their ego getting hurt sometimes, like, Paul's rejection of George's guitar noodling in Hey Jude, that never made the cut. Like,
right.
That's a very, very powerful thing. And it is, and that is something that is not necessarily unique to the Beatles, but it is not as widespread as it ought to be.
Yeah, I was going to say that there's from Boom Chicago to Ted Lasso, the Second City ethos, even though you weren't in Second City, that idea of sort of working as an ensemble to make something greater than the individuals is, there is a thematic thread there with the Beatles, even though you weren't consciously like, oh, I'm in Boom Chicago. This is like the Beatles from Chicago and Amsterdam. Sure. Or something.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're trying to make something more than the sum of its parts, then you're just on the right track, and that opportunity is available to all of us. But yeah, we don't all take it up because ego, circumstances, jealousy, whatever can get in the way, and the Beatles just managed to stave that off. Pretty much all the way to the end.
In a lot of the work that you've done, I mean, you're obviously this make your partner look good kind of actor. At the same time, you've done a few of these, one-person shows, including obviously culminating in this one right now, The Movement You Need. What is it that draws you to do the one-man show apart from this ensemble support of other things you're doing?
It has to start with what is the piece. I mean, it comes back to serve the piece. Like you have the idea for the thing, and then, what is the thing? And, I've written plays that are, more inherently more ensemble things. But I've written some solo shows now that, of putting it together and considering like, what can this be? It end up judging it to be about sort of a degree of intensity to a personal experience that intensity is best conveyed by personal conveyance. Like this, like I had a show called 5 Years in Amsterdam about living in Amsterdam. And, we had a lot of friends who became expats in Amsterdam, but they all had different experiences. And I couldn't try to weigh all of them in a 50-minute, comedy performance. But I could set fire to an arrow with mine for 50 minutes and ride that thing for everybody. And so it's similar with this. Like I think this is a pretty unique and long experience in terms of lifetime, not minutes, but also 80 minutes. So it's a little longer than my Amsterdam shows. But yeah, just looking at the totality of it, like, no, this needs to be someone standing there talking about something that happened to them. That is the best way to serve this piece. And so, yeah, here we are. Now it's all that, but with designers too.
There you go. What was the thing that got this from something you're thinking about in your own head to something that you want to present to audiences?
Partially just a desire to get something going, a timely desire to get something going. The process of the show was, so the final story in the show is about the birth of my son. And the birth of my son happens to happen while a Beatles song is playing on the shuffle. And when that happened, I was like, oh, well, you know what? There might be a show in here. And I tried to put something together at the Hollywood Fringe as like, almost just as an exercise. Like, I'll do it as a work in progress. I'll find the smallest room I can. I'll call it a work in progress and, see what I got here. Because I think I got a lot of stories that tie into the Beatles, actually. But then COVID got in the way, and the Hollywood Fringe just got canceled. And a couple years later, I, because of Ted Lasso, basically, had an opportunity to meet Paul McCartney. And after that happened, I realized, I got to go back to that idea of that show, because now it's got a frame. Now I can sort of pretend it's about meeting Paul McCartney when in fact it's about, my family. And so I was like, yeah, I'll just take it for a walk at the Hollywood Fringe. And we ended up with like a 30-seat room, this incredibly small space. And it just went so well, so quickly. I was like, oh, there's something here. But yeah, it only came out of a desire to like, get off my ass when I was finally at home between seasons of Lasso. And yeah, just feeling moved. I was just moved by a thing that happened and had to talk about it.
So you had two stages of it where you had the initial idea, but then didn't actually mount the show because of COVID. And then this, the McCartney encounter where you didn't say all the things that you're saying in the show, that sort of got you
right.
to the next. What did you say to him? So this was at a Taylor Hawkins tribute concert that Jason had gotten invited to, and Paul was sort of the surprise guest, and all of a sudden there you are with Paul McCartney. Like, what did you think when you saw him, and what did you actually say to him when you met him?
Well, there's only so many spoilers I can give you. Hold on, let me not give you nothing though either. My main thing really was like, because I had like, by then I had accumulated over my years in LA, especially early years when no one knew who the hell I was, I had accumulated a real long list of awkward interactions with celebrities whose work I enjoyed and respected. And like, I would just be like trying to be nice and I just would fuck it up. And I just was determined to not do that with Paul. And I was so determined that I said almost nothing to him. But one thing that did get said in it is, because he comes over and he's very chatty. He knows Jason from SNL. So it's me and Jason and our buddy Joe Kelly. And he's just very chatty because he knows Jason and he's so gregarious. He's still this, Liverpudlian. And after a while, Jason goes, because because we'd established by then that Paul had heard of Ted Lasso but not watched it yet. And this was while we were shooting season 3. And Jason eventually says, hey, Paul, just so you know, this last season, in an episode we shot, we used Hey Jude in a way that we hope that you will find lovely. And Paul goes, huh. That's it. He had zero interest in following up on what we had done with Hey Jude. It's like hugely special day in the history of the show. And Paul, like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm good, guys.
You didn't get a little handwritten note after the episode aired. Oh, I looked how you did that. That was sensitively handled.
No, but hey, great impression. That's rocking.
Oh, thank you.
But no, to my knowledge, I don't know if he's ever gotten around to seeing it, or even if he's started watching the show or finished it or not. But I did see Ringo at the Greek a couple years ago, and I had really good seats, and I was standing absolutely center, just a few rows in, and my wife thinks that Ringo was intentionally pointing at me with knowledge and a forethought of who I was, and I cannot confirm that, but I refuse to deny it as well.
This one goes out for Coach Beard. I don't think my Ringo's as good as my Paul. Well, I mean, do you sort of have fantasies of, like performing the show and having one of them in the audience?
I mean, fantasy sounds just a touch.
Not fantasy.
Too exciting. But I certainly,
what's more realistic?
I certainly am aware of Paul's. Yeah, true. Hopefully, I'm aware of Paul's history of wearing disguises to shows, and the thought crosses my mind that perhaps he's still got that box of mustaches, somewhere in his New York apartment. And if this show does get to New York, maybe he'll just, put on the old cap and gown and take a stroll. We'll see.
So I'm seeing the opening in a few days, or like a little bit more. But yeah, the thing to do would be for me it wouldn't work, but to dress up as if I were Paul dressing up to see your show. Just to make you think, oh my God, what's going on? See if I throw you off your game that way. That wouldn't be a nice thing to do, though.
I mean, it's a bit Moriarty. It's really like game within the game, but the game is afoot. I guess I'll try to find you.
So you've done this in Hollywood. You've done a version of it in New York. How loaded is it for you bringing it back to Chicago, where you grew up? And being at Steppenwolf, where you've obviously seen shows. Yeah,
I mean, it's just really cool. I did it at I.O. A couple nights last year, but the show, or maybe 2 years ago now. But that was before I had a director and these designers, and so there's no matter where I'd be doing this round, there's the added weight of sort of leveling up, production wise, but. There's, probably the whole first half of the show is set in Chicago and is about, my time here and growing up here. So to be able to make this offering back, to the people, this verbal offering is going to be really, really something, Yeah, I've done it here a couple times, but and there was a fair mix of friends and fans, but inherently there was a big amount that was friends and family, and this won't be that. It's mathematically impossible if things are going well. I only have I may be Irish Catholic, but I've only got so much family.
Right.
And yeah, I'm just really, really curious to see the response. But yeah, to get out of rehearsal, long rehearsal day, and be, walking the streets that I was walking when I was living this thing. It's a cool, heavy thing.
Are there family members here who you expect to see it, who haven't seen it yet, who you're going to be, I don't know, self-conscious about their reaction to, or curious about their reaction to it?
Almost everyone has seen it, except for my stepdad. And that is for a couple reasons. For one thing, he's moved to Key West, and so he's not up here. He hasn't been up here when I've been doing the show, so he hasn't even had the opportunity to see it. But also, I think he would have every right for it to be very hard for him, because it talks about the love of his life, the demise, and So he's coming to see it. It's now been vetted for him. Like my sisters have talked him through it and like what he can expect and what it is sort of like tonally and the big picture of it all. So he's coming, and it's certainly on my mind. And that night I need to stay frosty and do this exact same show I did earlier that day and the day before that and the day before that. But it will be a special thing, I think, for him to come see it. So I am looking forward to that.
Your process of creating the show from, when you first had the idea and then have done it in these different places, do you write out a script? Do you write out talking points and just kind of rehearse it based on that? Like, as someone who comes from the improv world, are you trying to do you have like lines that are all written out and then you're kind of like try to stick with it? Like, how does it work?
It's evolved with the needs of the production. Like when I first did it at the Hollywood Fringe for 30 people, like I had like a rock band style set list just taped to the floor, so I know which story I'm going to next. I had a music stand with cards, for if I would need it, and I had like two sound cues, which I was controlling from my phone. And yeah, it was largely bullet points. Like, okay, tell this story and tell this story and this story, and then record it. And I would record every show that I was doing. And it just got more scripted as time's gone on. And now that I've had this level up, like it has to be pretty much fully scripted. I mean, I will certainly noodle within the confines of it forever. I'm incapable of not doing that for a show like this. But it is basically, a script now, and people need that script so they can call the cues correctly and design the show properly. And so you have to surrender to what those needs are for everybody, even though, going up loosey goosey is plenty of fun. But that's just not what we're doing anymore. That's no longer what the piece needs.
Has it changed a lot since you last mounted it? And then also since you started preparing this production, does it change, until you hit opening curtain?
From where it starts to where it finishes is the same. And the journey is largely the same. Because it's in a big theater now, I do feel, and every time it's moved from a smaller theater to a bigger theater, like the first time I did it after the Hollywood Fringe was at Boom Chicago. So that was a jump from 30 people to like 360. And that was the first time I like really made an effort to go, think, okay, what more visuals can we have, to sort of honor like where we are and not just try to do the same tiny show in this bigger space. And that philosophy has sort of continued. So if this is a pre-Broadway run, I'm already kind of thinking of the Broadway of it. Like I don't think you want to see a Broadway show that's just a dude standing there walking back and forth playing records. So I'm trying to find things that are organic, from the script and germane to the material, things that pay off and things that don't cost much, to make it, to make it feel like it belongs in that kind of space. So there's a few additions and things we'll try, but right now we're gonna throw all the shit against the wall and see what sticks proverbially. But at its heart, it is the same show I've been doing, and part of the why of that is because, and this was such a tiny miracle, but the meeting of Paul, and this is why I'm so lucky I didn't do the show before I met Paul. The meeting of Paul ended up being this kind of like frame for the show, and that frame ended up being pretty solid. And because it was so solid, it made the rest of the show seem more finished than it actually was. And I don't know, that really puts an audience at ease to a certain degree. I think it's kind of hard to explain, but like it lets them, I don't know, it gets them to open up to you even more when they're like, oh, this knows what he's doing. Yeah, that bookend is still the bookend, and the actual finishing story is still the finishing story. The starting story is still the starting story. So some stuff is changing within, and like always trying to find new jokes, and new jokes can pop up from anywhere, and can still go in as long as I don't screw up a lighting cue. But yeah, at its heart, like it's more the same show from its beginning to now than any solo show I've ever done in the same time frame, I think.
Right.
It's odd. It's odd because on one hand it's grown so much, but on the other hand, like no, it's still the stuff that I felt at the beginning.
I read a story from a while ago where you said that your goal was to make an I Miss My Dead Mom solo show that doesn't suck. And so this was like the framework you came up for that. Performing this show, doing this night after night and revisiting this material, the relationship with your mother and everything, like what does that do to you sort of emotionally? Like when you're coming out of this, is this like a cathartic thing? Is it a draining thing? Is it going to be rough to do this many shows with that material?
It's draining and it's cathartic, and it has managed to still be that every single time I do the show. But yeah, now I'm going to be doing it 8 times a week, which I've not done before. And so we'll see about that. I mean, the stuff I'm talking about, like, really does still move me. Like, it's some of the, some of the most personally moving experiences I've ever had, which, doesn't mean the audience is always going to be as moved, of course, but I just, I'm going to try to bring them with me. Will I still feel that, on the second show on Sunday, having been doing it since Tuesday, or will I feel like, Billy Joel doing Piano Man for the millionth time? I do not know. But as of now, I think, I don't think it's going to wear down just yet, because it's just every time I get into it, and like I fear people listening to this who don't know much about the show yet are like, that doesn't sound very funny. Like, it is, I promise, it's a funny show. But the intense parts are the intense parts, and I kind of can't imagine those diminishing for me just because they're so personal.
I wasn't even thinking of it as diminishing as much as just, 8 times a week telling the story and being in that space with your mom. I would just think, on one hand, it could be therapeutic. On the other hand, it could be therapy inducing. Like, you might need therapy to deal with exposing yourself to that, so much every week.
Yeah. Yeah. I can only say that every night individually, it's therapeutic and cathartic, and exhausting. Like, when I first did it at the Hollywood Fringe, I did it actually in rep with my other solo show, 5 Years in Amsterdam, because they were asking me to do that in Amsterdam one last time at this big theater. Like, okay, great. And to get ready for that, I'll do it at the Fringe in Hollywood to remind myself of how that show works. And that show, like, it's got dancing, it's got costume changes, like it's kinetic, it's moving like crazy. I was like, okay, that show's going to wear me out. And when I schedule these, I should always do the Beatle one first and the Amsterdam one second. And that choice proved to be wrong, because this show where I'm just standing there talking is intensely more exhausting than the show that requires, gymnastics and running all over the place. Like, just it is emotionally draining for sure. And that was a huge surprise at the time.
Well, and people coming to this because they know and love you from Ted Lasso, it's going to be the most words they've ever seen you say. You probably say more because Coach Beard is so laconic, and here you're talking for 80 straight minutes. So that's like 10 seasons of Ted Lasso's worth of dialogue for you, right?
Yeah. I mean, probably 100 seasons worth. Yeah. People, like, it's so funny that people, associate me with Coach Beard and all, and I'm obviously grateful for it and everything, but like, we modeled Coach Beard's backstory, I mean, ever so slightly on mine, and heightened it to ridiculous proportions, but like, Beard does not talk, and I am a blabbermouth. Like, and people, people only know me from that are going to be surprised, not just by my amount of words, but I think by my pitch and by my timbre. Because I'm gonna have to let it rock and get all up and down the scale, just to get them through this thing.
Well, that again gets into like the solo album versus the band album, right? Because on the band album, you're partnered with a character who talks a lot and gives these speeches and stuff. And so Coach Beard is a perfect counterpoint to Ted Lasso going off into the ether. Whereas here, it's like, no, this is like McCartney. You're playing all the instruments. So
should be so lucky.
Well, maybe we'll be amazed. But
nice.
And I found it funny also that the first Second City show you saw that got you turned on to all this happened to be the one that was called Jean-Paul Sartre and Ringo. So you even had sort of the little Beatles connection there, right?
Boy, deep research here, Mark. Deep research, but yeah, that is 100% correct.
Right.
It was a Chemical Academy school trip.
And Bonnie Hunt was in the show, but you're not related to Bonnie Hunt, right?
No, I've only wished to be ever since that day. She was absolutely phenomenal, and like the whole cast was great, of course. But like she like really stood out to me, and this is before I knew we had the same initials and monograms on our towels. But yeah, that was a huge day, and yeah, the fact I never really thought about it until this, but yeah, the fact that it was a Beatlesy title. I mean, I didn't know who Sartre was, but I sure got the rest of the joke. The fact that it was a Beatlesy title probably made me a little bit more open to what that show had in store for me than it might have under any other circumstance.
Are you more Sgt. Pepper or White Album?
Sgt. Pepper. I prefer the sort of artistic totality of it.
And are you playing Beatles for your son, who I think turned 5 this year?
He did, and yeah, we are. When my first son was born, I made a point of making Yellow Submarine his fall asleep song, so that even before he would know what it was or understand anything about it or anything, like he knows Yellow Submarine. So he's known the words Yellow Submarine almost since he's known how to say dad, and just trying to just like push him slowly on that path. And we play Beatles stuff for him all the time, and he knows Hey Jude now. And yeah, just trying to plant little seeds, and then it's up to him whether he'll how far he'll let them grow. But yeah, we're trying to pass all that message on down.
When I was preparing for this, just beforehand, I asked my older kid who's home. I said, "So what's your best like Beatle bonding memory with us?" Because we always sang and played them Beatles songs, and he said, well, "When you took us to see Paul at Wrigley," and I'm like, "Yeah, that's true." It's like I remember going online, buying the tickets for Paul McCartney and Wrigley Field, and when my wife came home, I said, "Well, I just did my best act ever as a dad. Our kids are going to see Paul McCartney." So there you go. Here's
I have an 8-year-old niece, and my sister just took her to see Paul for the first time this last year as well, and I'm so proud of her. So proud. Well done.
Here's a question that you won't be able to answer. Why is it that every generation loves the Beatles, and yet people who make music that sounds like the Beatles now are uncommercial? Like nobody, like there are no hit songs that sound like the things that we love about the Beatles. Popular music is
that's a big Pandora's box to open.
Yeah, I know.
A lot of it's huge problems. Like also, why are we not hearing any protest songs? Doesn't seem likely that no one's writing them. And like they show up on Instagram every now and again, but they're not going to show up on any charts. I'm interested to see what ripple effect the Live Nation decision has on all of it. I'm hoping that is like the crack in the armor that starts for everything to get brought down to its knees and a reshuffle to happen. Because hey, I'm not in the music industry. I only know so much from afar, but it sure looks like things are a mess in a way that is worse for artists and worse for people who enjoy music. So, yeah, hopefully this is the beginning of the reshape coming now.
The Live Nation decision meaning
like, okay, I think Live Nation and Ticketmaster monopoly, I think is part of why it is indicative of the like uber corporate strength that is behind the music industry now. And like, yeah, people have always said like, music is it's gone too corporate, but now it's like it's in this insane corporate control, and like there's only a few artists having a ton of hits and getting billions of plays and everything, and like it's hard. It's so much harder it seems like for new acts to get up, and yeah, and like someone's making decisions. Fewer people are making fear-based monetary decisions, and not as many artistic decisions about what we're hearing. So to the question of like, why aren't we hearing as much Beatlesy stuff? Like, well, I think there's a lot we're not hearing, really, because it's just not the way it used to be. Like, is college radio still college radio? Like, are those kind of seeds still being planted in kids' hearts? It's harder to know from here.
No, my kids would play me something and say, "Where'd you learn this song?" They'd be like, YouTube. it's like algorithms, but who's controlling the algorithms? And that's part of the issue too.
Cool.
All right, I'm going to throw in one Ted Lasso question because I got to do it because you got the season coming up. But I know you're not going to like explain and give spoilers for it. But what was kind of the linchpin in getting from that point of, because it seemed like, you got to the end of season 3 and there was like sort of closure, and then like we need to find sort of the entry point to season 4 if there's going to be a season 4. So what was that entry point?
Mm-hmm. It's two-pronged. One is it's been out there that, I always saw it as a 3-part journey, which became a 3-season journey. It's been slightly overstated the degree to which we knew everything that was going to happen. But what we could not have expected was the reaction we would get and how much we enjoyed doing it. So it did not dissuade us from wanting to finish the story that we set out to do, and we got there. And then, there was just a lingering sense of like, are we really done with this? And it was Jason who came up with the notion, and we planted the seed sort of just in case, in that final montage, like, what about it's a more interesting challenge to have to rebuild the series than to just pick up where we left off. So I think that is the end. What drew Jason closer is like, okay, this is a higher degree of difficulty. This is less likely to just be, writing our own coattails. Like we're gonna have to work to make this right.
Right.
So we went about it, and we'll see if people dig it or not.
When I was in college, there was a press junket for Give My Regards to Broad Street, and I was the editor of the paper at Penn. And I went up to the Plaza Hotel where they stayed, and there was like a dozen of us and Paul, and it was like a college press conference, and the other kids were asking questions like, what was it like to work with Sir Ralph Richardson, and stuff that I couldn't fathom, like, it's a Beatle, he's right there. And I sort of went the opposite direction. It's like someone who just worshiped this guy. And the question that came out of my mouth was, it seems like in this movie and on your recent albums, you're trying to present yourself as a role model. Do you feel like you undercut that by getting busted for drugs in airports? And he goes, he's like, well, sorry, it's my Paul again. He's like, I could have had one of my mates carry it, but I'm just not that kind of guy. And I'm sure your parents come home and have a drink at the end of a long day. I don't think it's any different. He gave a perfectly reasonable response, and I was just like, God, what a shitty thing to ask him. So I've always wanted to make up for it and have him do an interview with him. That was my regret, was not that I didn't tell him how much his music meant to me. I asked him about getting busted for drugs in airports. Snotty little kid.
Well, I think you got a far more interesting answer from him with that. So I think your instincts were right.
I am not getting a show out of that, though. So anyway, I look forward to seeing yours, The Movement You Need, when it opens up here. And I'll be the one dressed as Paul, dressed as someone else. It's been a pleasure talking to you. And thanks so much again. I really appreciate it. And I'll see you around.
Thank you, Mark. Take care. Say hi to Mary.
That's it for episode 222 of Caropop. Thanks so much to Brendan Hunt for taking us into his personal intersection of creativity, performance, family bonding, and the Beatles. The Movement You Need, An Evening with Brendan Hunt, is up and running through May 10th at Chicago's Steppenwolf Theater. Go to steppenwolf.org to learn more and to buy tickets. And look for Season 4 of Ted Lasso to debut on Apple TV Plus this summer. You can follow Brendan Hunt on Instagram at Brendan Hunting. One word. Caropop is produced by Chris Wake, who knows how to take a sad song and make it better. What? Thanks to all who support Caropop. If you'd like to throw something into the Caropop kitty, we'd be much appreciative. And I'll give you a shout out on the next episode. Please go to caropop.com. Thanks so much for listening and being here. I'm Mark Caro. Please follow Caropop on the so-called socials at CaroPopcast. You can follow me as well at Mark Caro at MarkCaro. Please share this episode, subscribe here and on YouTube, tell your friends, and return next week for another Caropop conversation. Thanks.